platforms?
Well, first of all, we're all making incredible investments. You see that in the capital spending of all of the big companies, the expansion of data centers around the world. I would say when you think about Azure, I'd say a few things. First, we're really about opportunities for multi-platform. If you have something you want to run on a Linux virtual machine, we love to have you. If you have something that you want to run on a Windows machine, we love to have you. Over 40% of our workloads now run in Linux VMs. But the other thing we're really all about, I think the thing that perhaps in some ways differentiates us more, is the variety of choices we're trying to give people around the world. We have over 50 data center regions, so we're building data centers everywhere. We've launched the Azure Stack so that if customers want to keep their data on-prem but get the best of our cloud technology, they can do that, they can install it, and then it will update with our technology. So it's about giving people more choice, and this clearly is a growth path that has a long ways ahead of it.
Thank you. If you do have a question, I know Jason you did have one. Great. Anybody else? Just step in towards the middle. I want to avoid going too close to the speakers. Jason.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for coming. A huge fan. So you make decisions that end up affecting billions of people. How do you, what kinds of thought processes, decision-making processes do you go through when you're dealing with these kinds of decisions that you have to make?
Well, it's a great question, and life is complicated. That's the first thing that I would say. What we really strive to do to deal with that complexity is articulate a set of principles and use those principles both to guide the decisions we make ourselves and then to publish them so that then people know what we're basing our decisions on, and then we'll even try to stand behind them when in terms of contractually obligating ourselves to adhere to them. So when we went to the cloud, we had a series of cloud trust principles. We're now we're articulating ethics for AI. And then a lot of what I do, frankly, is remind people of the principles that we put forth, and then just ask everybody to engage in a conversation about how those principles apply to the hard question of the day. And I'll get involved in those myself, but mostly it's about ensuring that a large number of people can sort of internalize those principles and act on them.
Okay, Rachel.
Hi, how are you, Brad?
Hi.
Thoroughly enjoyed the talk you just gave over at Center Stage. Okay. So in tandem with getting broadband and internet access out to rural areas, we know remote work gives people an opportunity to have jobs that they might not have. Do you see a future of Microsoft kind of working in collaboration with getting also not just the broadband and the internet out there, but more jobs to the rural areas?
It is absolutely something that we're very focused on. I think we have to find new ways to reinvigorate job growth in more rural areas. And at a certain level, with the cloud and with access to broadband, it should be easier than it has been in the past. We have an initiative we call TechSpark. We're partnering deeply with 6 less urban communities across the country. And we're trying to learn more about what works and what doesn't work so that we can spread that around, share it with policymakers and the like. But I really do feel that one of the opportunities for us in this era is to ensure that rural areas that have been such a scene for innovation in the past can be that kind of scene for innovation in the future.
Errol.
Hello. Professor at Boston University. You didn't mention the issue of causation at all. Will putting broadband in rural areas actually increase prosperity? Is there any evidence that is actually, looking at places where it's been installed, that it's actually increased prosperity? I know that rural areas also have older cars than urban areas. Would giving them new cars give them prosperity?
It's a great question. And we're starting to study this whole field much more deeply. And of course, what we're not surprisingly finding is that there's a need for a lot more study. What I shared was this 90% correlation between lack of broadband access and higher unemployment. But then you're asking the next logical question. Can we make the leap from high correlation to substantial causation? I would say at an intuitive level, we feel the answer is yes, but it'll require more experimentation and more work to sort of validate and prove that. Now, offhand, I would just say any of us who work in the tech sector who provide cloud services, I think we do know that access to a better cloud service is more important, say, to a farmer and precision farming than a new car. but we have more work to do to prove that.
Good morning. Kenneth Saunders III. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. One of the things that you all have like 2 Microsoft stores in our area, but the problem, well, not necessarily a problem, but one of the things that I see is that they're actually located away from predominantly minority areas. What is Microsoft going to do as far as with being able to outreach more to minorities, so that way that with the classes that you all serve for teachers and whatnot, that the teachers in the minority areas actually have access to those services?
No, you ask a very fair question. We have something over 100 retail stores in the United States. Not surprisingly, they are in malls where there's lots of traffic. Because our products are more expensive, they do tend to be in areas where people come in with wallets where they can afford our products. And yet we need to reach to the parts of the community where people have less money, where there's more racial diversity and the like. The first step we've taken with our retail stores is to have an employee at each store who's a community engagement manager. When we first opened these stores, we thought that community engagement was about bringing the community into the store. Now, increasingly, we find that it's the job of the community engagement manager to take the store to the community. So I think that's step one. The other thing that I think it's important for us to remember is the stores are a piece of what we do, but they're just a piece. So when you look at the work that we're doing through Microsoft Philanthropies, through our various business ventures, that is, I think, an area where we can do even more work. And when we look at our technology, education, and literacy in schools program, one of the specific things we're measuring is minority participation. And now we're focused on getting those programs into schools where there is a higher minority population, also more rural schools and the like. We get the message. And I think the good news for us is we have more than the stores alone on which we can rely.
Hi, Brad. My name is Stephanie Scobber-Hewitt, and I'm actually from Seattle, too.
Yeah.
The question I had for you is, as the decisions you make impact many, many lives, what impact do you personally want to have over the next year? And not just the how, but the why, too.
I think the why is a great place to start. And yeah, if I just build on the presentation I just gave, I think when you work in the tech sector, you have this intuitive optimism that everything you're doing will improve everyone's lives, because you have this faith that if people use their products, it actually will. But I think there's 2 big things we need to think about. One is the sort of responsibility that goes with that opportunity, first around issues like trust. There's all these questions around the world about privacy, about cybersecurity, about artificial intelligence and ethics. And a big part of what I am focused on doing is ensuring that first at Microsoft, but really across the tech sector and more broadly, we're all not just thinking about these responsibilities, but taking new steps to act on them. And then second, when it comes to the technology opportunity, I think we need to start having the kind of conversation that I came here to help instigate to some degree. Technology is not moving everybody forward equally. In fact, it is in some ways widening some of the divides that we care about. So let's start talking about that, and let's figure out how we can take more steps together to close those divides.
Hi, Brad. Nelson Wong from TheStreet.com. In terms of talking about the broadband divide and access to rural areas, I wondered what you think of the proposed merger between T-Mobile and Sprint and what impact that might have on rural areas' access to broadband.
Well, obviously the merger just was announced. I think we'll all have the opportunity to learn more. The agencies in Washington, D.C., both at the FCC and on the antitrust side, will be evaluating it. I don't know what the answer is. It's, I think, too early. We'll decide whether we want to even offer a point of view. I do think you're asking the right question. Fundamentally, I think for the future of telecommunications in this country, we have to figure out what is going to close these broadband gaps, both in cities and in rural areas. And I think we should start, by even voicing a level of disquiet about the fact that we've been talking about a broadband gap or an internet access divide for 20 years. And yet it is not necessarily getting better. And we should question everything that we've been applying when it comes to public policy and private sector action, and I think really get our hands around the data, think about these economic and analytical issues and figure out how we're going to make this a better place, because there is just no way that people would come to New Orleans and be comfortable with 25 million Americans lacking access to electricity. Why should we be comfortable with 25 million Americans lacking access to broadband? We should not.
Hi, Brad. My name's Christy Felder. I'm a TAM at Microsoft. So thank you for coming to New Orleans, my hometown. So my question kind of touches on this gentleman's question that we have 2 Microsoft retail stores, and we are growing. We've got GE Digital, we've got DXC Technology coming here. We're on the map. So what would it take to encourage Microsoft to creating a Microsoft Technology Center right here in New Orleans?
Leave it to the Microsoft employee to ask the toughest question. The short answer is I don't know, but the long answer is I'll go find out. I'll go talk to some of the other senior folks in the company, and we'll see what their roadmap looks like and what it might mean and what it might take to put New Orleans on that roadmap.
Hi, Brad. I also work at Microsoft.
Oh, no. Now I'm really afraid.
I've been there 3 years. I just want to say thank you for all the D&I work you've done. I love working at a company that values that stuff. The question I want to ask is, as far as diversity and inclusion goes in the tech space, we talk a lot about gender and racial divides. I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on LGBTQIA+ inclusion over the next few years and what that looks like, since it's tougher to know and identify and it changes over people's lives.
You ask a great question. You know, I think we have to start with the premise that on almost any inclusion or diversity issue, certainly in the tech sector, we have a lot more work to do. And it's on every attribute that you can think about. We have a long road ahead of us. I'm pleased with some of the steps that we've been able to take in recent years to better address the needs of the LGBTQ population. You know, we started over 2 decades ago inside Microsoft with a benefits policy that would ensure that there was benefits coverage to everyone and their families based on how they define their families. You know, we found our voice, which was not an easy journey at times, but we found our voice and we used our voice on issues like marriage equality. We found our voice in Ireland when it became a national referendum topic there. We found our voice in other countries. I think the biggest thing we have to do right now, frankly, is make sure that things don't slip backwards, because this is a time when I think some of these important advances, you know, could be at risk. And obviously in the LGBTQ space, that's key. In the immigration space, that's key. And then we need to figure out how we sustain momentum and keep moving forwards. I think a lot of this is about building on the broadening understanding across society, you know, something that we felt was taking root more broadly across this country, and try to reignite that. Because one of the things we've learned is while we can do certain things to create a good experience inside the workspace, that doesn't really help people completely if they leave the office and encounter a more hostile community. So we need to do more at work, and we need to do more outside of work.
Folks, we are short on time. We have time for a couple of more questions, so apologies if I don't get to you.
Thank you. We'll be very brief. It's more of a thank you than a question. And my name is Amanda Gresham with United by Music North America, and I want to thank you so much for including differently abled people in your mission to provide inclusion with tech. And we are performing for you at the Special Olympics in this July in Seattle. So we have a band of autistic individuals that are musically talented and amazing, and thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to perform with you for Microsoft.
Well, thank you. I'll just say for all of you or any of you who care about people with disabilities, a population of over 1 billion people around the world, 2 things. One, watch our Build conference next week in Seattle. Satya Nadella will give his keynote, and he'll have something I think interesting and important to say for this community. But the second thing is a 10-second commercial. Yes, the Special Olympics USA Games are coming to Seattle. It's the first week in July. ESPN will be covering it. I'm the honorary chair of those games. We're all incredibly excited to welcome everybody.
Hi, I'm Christine Campbell. Thanks for coming. I'm a Microsoft alumna, and I'm a very proud Microsoft alumna. I have started my own company, so my question is about Microsoft Ventures and how Microsoft can get more involved with the startup community and what we can do to
also become engaged with you guys?
Well, Peggy Johnson was here just a couple of days ago, and she's really spearheaded this new side of Microsoft. It just really didn't exist until the last couple of years. And it reflects really an understanding on our part that we want and need to do more to support the startup community. Now, part of that obviously is sometimes financial investments. That's what Microsoft Ventures in part was created to help advance. But obviously, as all of you appreciate if you're from the startup world, it's about a lot more than that. So we're thinking about how we make technology tools and technology know-how more accessible, and less expensive for the startup community. But we're really also, I think, increasingly interested in how we help startups succeed. How do we help people go to market? How do we take the know-how that we have inside a big company at Microsoft, say around issues like privacy with the European GDPR taking effect? How can we share that? So I know if Peggy were here, she would say, we're open to ideas, please share them with us. We're excited about this and we want to do more in the years ahead.
Brad, I'm Michael Phillips with AARP in Washington, and we're working very closely with you guys on some great innovative products for older Americans. We know that the 70 plus are expanding, doubling over the next few decades. Innovation around AI, voice technology, all in the Azure cloud. But so many live in rural areas or are retiring to rural areas. So I just wanted to ask, as you're looking at where those opportunities are, is there a lens of the aging community and how Microsoft can help that community as they grow older?
I think there is, and I think there needs to be, and I think there's an opportunity for us to look through that lens probably even more clearly than we are. I think one of the things for all of us who work in the tech sector, almost the first thing one does is you look at the people coming out of college because they're sort of defining so many of the technology trends. But we constantly need to remind ourselves that these are products that have a huge, maybe even profound impact on the lives of everybody, including of all ages. Certainly, one of the aspects of many that we are focusing on is the one that you mentioned. I can now say myself, you get to a certain age and your eyes are not what they used to be. There are many things that sometimes are not what they used to be, and people have so much potential. At least I feel I still have some in me. And we do want to make sure that technology serves everybody, that our products serve everybody, but it does then connect with these broader societal themes. Because obviously the cloud isn't nearly as beneficial if you don't have a broadband connection. We do need to be making sure that prosperity is a real opportunity for everybody. Back to one of the other themes that one of you mentioned, people were working in more ways. They're working remotely, they're working part-time, the gig economy has become a phrase of our time. And among many other things, we also want to ensure that the kinds of sort of social contract that we've had in this country around a minimum wage, around minimum benefits and the like, do continue and reach everybody, even when they're working in different ways. And we're going to have to modernize even our employment system to some degree to make that a reality.
Folks, unfortunately we are out of time, but I'd like to thank you all for dropping by. Do keep an eye on the app, get to as many talks as you can, and make sure to visit all the startups that are with us here this week at Collision. But Brad, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. See you.
Okay.